Guys, welcome to Rise and Grind, from the playing field to parenthood. It's me, Alex, and Danielle with her hot tea slash remedy of the cold. So if she sounds a little different today, go easy on her. She's fighting some battles right now.
Please go easy on me.
But for episode 9 today, our plan is to talk all things recruiting. It's one of the things that have come up a lot in the last couple of weeks because it's fall, which is a really hot time for softball recruiting specifically when it comes to tournaments, showcases, and all that jazz. I know a lot of people were out at like Surf City this last weekend was a big one. It's like a 4 or 5 day tournament, and I remember coaching. We were there from like 8 a.m. till 9 p.m. every day, just trying to catch every game you could possibly catch.
Yeah.
And then before the dead period, which is, I think now, I'm not super caught up on all the new like recruiting calendar changes. I don't know how much you keep up with that, but
I definitely don't. Not hardcore. It's different than back in the day.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting too, because like technically Maddie plays on a travel team, right? So how early are they talking to them about that stuff? Because the Bullets is a big organization up there.
Yeah, it's a legit organization, and I think it was really cool for us this last summer to go and watch like the 18s, like Tia Malloy. Obviously, Lawyer Malloy helps coach, and our kids play with Brea. So like getting to see that 18-year-old team and the talent and stuff was super cool for our team.
Yeah.
We don't talk to them much about that process yet. Like Maddie is the youngest of the group, and then the oldest, is obviously 12. They're going to move to 14U next year. I think it starts to get pretty serious when you hit the 14s, where you start to have those conversations of, how you're responding to things, how you're portraying yourself, like coachability, all of those. We definitely hold them to I think a higher standard as far as how we choose to coach them and practice plans and stuff like that. But
right.
I don't know. There's just this still innocence of wanting to keep it somewhat fun too. Like,
yeah,
I don't want to turn them off from it being so work at 10, 11, 12 to where it's, the next 5 years of their life just seems like, right?
Yeah. It's already going to become a job, quote unquote, for them, like once they get to college. So like keeping it not a job for as long as possible, I think that's a good strategy. But I agree with you. I think 14 is when it kind of starts. At least that's when I remember seeing the most emails kind of start coming in. So like I'm trying to think back to like head coaching at Academy of Art and then assistant coaching at UC Davis. It's like the amount of emails that you get on a day-to-day basis during like the active times when they're allowed to contact you. It's insane. And it's like to have to sift through those and figure out like, okay, you're still 12. Like we don't, there's nothing we need to be talking about yet. But then also like trying to pick up on the ones, it's such a tough thing because when you think of recruiting and like the type of player that you want on your team, and I'm saying this from a coach's perspective right now because that's what I'm thinking of is you almost don't want your kid reaching out too early because as a coach, to me, that's like, why are they already focusing on this? Like, what are they not doing outside of this that's like it's almost like you have too much time on your hands. Like stop emailing the coaches.
Yeah, I agree.
But it's tough, man, especially with technology now, like and Max Preps and stuff. Like that wasn't a thing when we were playing, and Max Preps like does all the stats and everything, and they can keep everything updated electronically, and YouTube was like barely a thing. We're so old.
I really appreciated the time that we grew up in.
Right.
I did, for so many reasons. Like, I really think social media is the devil for a lot of these kids. Like, the comparison piece will eat you alive.
Right.
But I also think it stems like from the parents, right? Like I feel lucky because I somewhat know the process. I feel like my husband and I have a good kind of even keel mentality when it comes to all of these things. But when you have these parents that want it so bad for their kids because their kids are probably really talented, I'm for it. But I also think the pressure that the parents can put on the kids is a lot, right? And then you have
Yeah.
parents that are scrolling on social and seeing that this kid's doing this and going to this tournament and their stats and their numbers are these. Like, that stuff's important to an extent, but like even our podcast interview last week with Coach Tar talking about like multiple sports and one of their biggest recruits ever coming in, who's a multi-sport athlete, like may not be at the tip top of where she needs to be for softball, but that's not a concern because she knows athletically she will get where she needs to be. Right. So it's like having trust in your process throughout all of this, but like parents, like pump the brakes a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
respect the grind, but more importantly, do your research the right way. I think there's just a right and a wrong way to go through the process. And I at times overthink this process too, because I'll go, is my kid ever going to be like good enough to maybe get this opportunity? Does she want it bad enough? And then I'm like, dude, at the end of the day, if she gets the opportunity, cool. And if she doesn't, cool. Like,
Yeah.
sports wasn't for me back in the day because the opportunities we just didn't know, like now. Like, it was never to get a full ride scholarship. I didn't know that. I purely played because I loved kicking people's asses. Like, I loved sports for that piece. So I think continuing to, kind of integrate that piece into their mindset of like working hard for a purpose, for the better of the team. And then you'll start to kind of see you have to like really want to work at it. And that's what makes it a challenging process, but letting the noise be the noise, because that ain't going away. Like, you're going to feel pressure from your teammates. You're going to feel pressure from other people that are getting these opportunities, maybe younger than you. You're going to always get that. How do you choose to deal with it? Are you working with a sports psychologist? Are you like, what are the different outlets that these kids have, instead of becoming so internal where they're turned off from wanting to like really work hard because they're scared they may not get the same opportunities? Do you know what I mean when I say that?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I feel for them because it's a constant comparison game, and that's never going away. And shame on the stats always being there for like 12-year-old kids. 12-year-old kids don't need to be looking at the stats 24/7. Why?
And who are the ones keeping the stats?
Yeah. And how
parents, right? It's the parents.
How many game changers are actually accurate?
Exactly. Oh gosh, thank you for saying it. Amen. Because I have a Game Changer account. We just set one up for my son for this last fall to like actually like live stream the games. But our purpose behind it was to live stream the games so that people who aren't there can watch them, family members, whatever. But then you also have the stats on top of that. And they're like printing out these reports that are insane. I'm like, these kids, they don't even understand what a stolen base is. Yeah. And we're keeping track of that. They don't understand what an error is. Like, they know they messed up, but they don't know how that affects their stats.
Yeah.
And in my head, it's like, you have all of these applications, you have all of these ways, and it just feels like everybody's just trying to say, well, my kid's the best. Well, my kid's in this, like, it's just like, it's such a ranking thing. And at the end of the day, it's like, I don't want my kid to be the best. I don't want to sit there and feed into that, because if they think they're the best, then they might pull back. They might not be working as hard because they're like, well, I'm the best on the team. And that's definitely not the attitude you don't want them taking as they head into like high school and stuff. Yeah. Right. You want them to feel like they're the smallest fish in the sea, and they're going to have to like fight and claw their way to earning that top spot.
Yep. Yep.
Not to take away from the kids that are the best, but
you can become complacent. And I can at least say throughout my process, like, I was always chasing something because I was always on some type of a national team and the youngest on the team. And so, yeah, at my age, I was probably one of the best in BC or maybe even in the country for my age, but always playing with women that were older on that national team scale, like, always made me feel, and I'm not always going to say the best, but I always felt like I had to continue to work to prove. But I do believe, you and I think had this conversation. Like, I do feel like a kid has to have a year where they are able to feel like they are the best, to develop this set of maybe a leadership set skills, to know, like, I don't know. I don't feel like it's always healthy if a kid is like, I use my kid for an example, right? Like Maddie's always been on a team where they are significantly older. She's not
Older.
always
Yeah.
the go-to. She's not always the one that is getting to play on Sunday. Majority of the time she's getting a hit. She's not always playing defense. She's not always the one pitching. So my husband and I have this, mentality about it, like going into next year. Like I need to figure out like what's the year that I give Maddie an opportunity to play with another team to build up that pitching confidence to see if it's something that she wants to do. Like we have to give her that time. We haven't given her that time. So we have those conversations a lot. Because I do believe like even when you play with older kids, you need that time to develop a little bit. And Coach Tar made the point when I asked her about it, I want to say she even said with Bailey Klingler, she said Kling has always played with teams that are significantly older than her.
Right.
And she said at times she kind of missed maybe this developmenting, that's not even a word. Sorry, I'm sick. Where she could have gained, it's not working, where she could have gained a little bit more like leadership skills or something, but she was always playing with these kids, which ultimately Bailey Klingler is one of the best in the country. Who's top 3 national finalists for player of the year. But Coach Tar was just saying, like, give Maddie that opportunity to be able to play with kids her own age and let her develop. And then you're able to go play and then let it ride the rest of the way through, which I completely do agree with.
Yeah. No, I think it can definitely be beneficial because then they understand too. I think they get a better grasp. And I think we did this with Penelope because she was playing up. So she was younger. Her skills weren't as honed. Like she wasn't the best on the team. She's playing with older kids. And then she was on a team where she was the best player on the team. And that happened for about a season or two. And then now she's kind of back in a position where they're playing 7th and 8th graders. So all the teams they're playing are way better than them. So she does have this good understanding of like, okay, I can be the best, but I want to continue to push to be their best. It's super delicate because you have to do it at the right time. And like, when is that right time? And, I think we get so wrapped up in, got to record everything. We got to have it all on tape. We have to have all the evidence. And at the end of the day, like college coaches, I'm sure the ones you talk to and know also are like, I'm not going to watch tape from when they were 10 years old. Like that's not going to do anything for me when they're 18. And I think there's also, we talked about this, the money grabs, the club teams, the select teams that are all like, we'll help you get recruited. We'll do this. Unless you're playing for like a well-known established organization, like Maddie is, like where that connection has already been established, like where they have that credibility, they're probably blowing smoke because there is a piece of it. And I feel like this is where it gets a little hairy, where there is a piece of it where it is about who you know. It is about what connections you've made, what coaches what, managers or recruiting people you have on the staff, and who they know and who they can get you that connection with. But when you think about all the websites that like advertise to these parents, like we'll help you get recruited, we'll send everything for you, we'll put it all on this pretty website for you. At the end of the day, I don't know a lot of college coaches that look at that stuff.
No, I agree with you fully. I don't. I do. A lot of stuff is a money grab, and it's being grabbed by parents that maybe don't have the same amount of knowledge in that situation. And I'm not going to say like grasping for straws, but it's like to them, that's all they know. And it seems like a great opportunity because it looks really good and shiny from the outside.
And pretty. Yep.
But until you're really like in it, it's such a weird time, right? Like I wrote a couple things down of like big time priorities that you should be as an athlete, like individually looking for throughout this process. Like if you are fortunate enough to get the opportunity to be looked at by coaches, like you have to know, number one, like the academic priority. What's your priority, right? I think back in the day, we used to have to like send stuff in the mail to these coaches, like all the stuff on ourselves, our schooling, like SAT scores, like what
report
we do
cards,
for workouts, everything, right? And always like the finishing touch would be like making sure you have some secret sauce to this university. Like what makes this university stand out to you? Why do you want to go there? What is academically a big piece of like what you want to be able to do? So it's like knowing like that piece, because at the end of the day, like your athletic career is only going to take you so far. If you don't get the opportunity to play, at the next level with a national team, or if you don't get to play in this, AUSL new league with Athletes Unlimited, which I think is going to be a really huge staple in the women's professional league. Like, if those opportunities ain't there, you have 4 years to maximize your athletic career. So you have to know academically, like, I want to get a degree in something that is going to at least help me in the next phase of my life. So number one, academic. I think that's huge. Number two, like the coaching style, right? Like, I think the importance of knowing what makes you tick as an athlete, because you know damn well you are going to go into different situations, hence why you have a lot of athletes at times that choose to enter the transfer portal,
right?
That maybe choose to go to a school at a way younger age, and then they get there and they're like, damn, this coach does not make me tick. Like, they're coming at me, I don't like it, we aren't vibing. And that's a big deal. I don't know if athletes truly understand the importance of, like, you're with that coach for 4 years. So you have to respect them and appreciate the way that they're telling you and sending you this message. We can't hate the messenger. We got to hear it and we got to put it to use. And that's hard, right? Like,
you have to be willing to go to battle for them. Like, you have to be willing to like sacrifice everything for that coach. And if you don't feel that sense of like loyalty and like commitment to whatever they're trying to accomplish and however they're dishing out their message, it's not going to go well. Like, you're just not going to be able to put yourself in the best position to succeed either. So I think that's, exactly what you said. It's, you have to understand what coaching style you vibe with, and then you have to understand how to communicate that with whoever's recruiting with you, right? Like, if you talk to a coach or two, and maybe that's one of the questions that you should have on the top of your priority. Like, what would you say your coaching style is? Like, are you a barker? Are you a soft, like, it'll be okay, everything's fine? Or are you somebody that needs to know, like, right away, like, you fucked up?
And maybe having the balls to send a DM to an athlete on the team and be like, hey, like, let's keep it real here. Like, I'm so interested in this school. I admire, let's just use Florida for an example. Like, I admire, like, Florida and Gator softball, and watching how they go and do business. Watching them in Oklahoma City this year is one of the coolest things ever, almost taking down Oklahoma and forcing them to a game 2, right? Like, that was one of the coolest things. So it's like reaching out to those types of players, or reaching out to a Skylar Wallace and saying, like, hey, like, I'm a player that this makes me tick. And when a coach does this, this really helps me. Is this a program that's going to help me, or is it something that's not? And like, ask for like full transparency. I don't think that's a bad thing, because I would honestly say if someone reached out to me about the Washington stuff and wanted me to be honest with them, like, I would tell them, if they receive information this way or this way, like, I would say, this was my experience and this is the good, the bad, and the ugly that I got out of it. You're either going to appreciate that or you're not. Like, I'm not going to make it all fluffy just so anyone would choose to go to a school. Like, I think the student athlete would be pretty open and honest with someone that reached out and wanted feedback with their experience. I think they would.
And I think we know, us specifically, probably me and you, and maybe more of the players before the transfer portal became a thing, know our coaches so well. Like, we're so in tune with like their style and their decisions, that it's like part of you is super protective of the people that are going into that program, right? Like, you hold it in such a high regard. Like, we both had such great experiences in college that it's like, if you want into that, like, I'm being super protective mama bear about that's my program. Like, you need to make sure you make the cut. But at the same time, it's like, I also want to be realistic with you about the tendencies of this coaching style, because in the end, that's only going to help the coaches, because we know how they operate. And if this athlete doesn't seem like somebody who's going to vibe well with that, we don't want to waste their time either.
Totally.
You know? I think alumni would be a good place to reach out to. Because like a lot of times, like the current athletes, I mean, especially now with like 1 million followers and NILs and all that stuff, like, they might not be as quick to respond, but like, don't give up on that. Like, try alumni too, who aren't as like in the thick of it, who might be able to give you some kind of feedback.
Yeah. I do think too, like, going back to things that are important, like geographically figuring out where it is you want to go, right? Like, there is such a difference in playing in the Pacific Northwest, playing, in the Midwest.
SEC,
like, are you someone that wants to be close to your family? Are you someone that does not? Like, I told you that I pretty much just had 3 offers: Nebraska, Alabama, and Washington. And ultimately, like, Alabama and Nebraska, great, amazing schools. But at the end of the day, like I knew I wasn't fulfilled not being able to have my family be able to watch. So getting to play 2 hours shy of where my family lives, that was a hell of a reason as to why I chose UW. So
Right.
it's just being able to know those things. Because that's kind of a big deal too. You can think that like the big shiny schools or the top 5 school, like I want to go there because they're top 5, they're in Oklahoma City all the time, but you dedicate your life to the sport, you earn the right to choose where you want to go, and that's really special, but you don't know until you're there, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
until you're really there in person, living the grind, the dark ass fall winter days where you're putting hay in the barn and it's tough because you're getting
Mm-hmm.
humbled day in and day out. Like that's where you start to sometimes question your abilities, your decisions, and all of those things. So it's like really making sure throughout this process, and I wish that I would have done a better job of this, was just writing stuff down. I didn't know. I didn't
Right.
know back in the day at 14, 15, 16 to write stuff down. But writing down things like pros and cons of what
Each
make
one.
you, yeah,
Yeah.
like just all the things and things that stand out to you. Like I think climate's a huge factor when you're
Yeah.
choosing where you want to go. Like,
I don't go above like Oklahoma. Like that's the hottest I can go. Like I mean the coldest I can go cuz
yeah,
I mean I'm from California. Like I'm a beach person to my core. Clearly I
yeah,
went to Hawaii, now I'm in Texas. Like I don't go above that line just because
yeah.
I know I'm not it's not fun for me. And then to have to play in that, I don't know how the East Coast teams like Northeast, I don't know how they do it.
I
Even you
think
in the weather.
the coolest the coolest thing for me was when we did the Hall of Fame thing for Andrew and we got to like I remember first starting to date Andrew and went to a Boston College football game and they were tailgating on the softball field because the softball baseball field was joint. And
Uh-huh.
Andrew was like, "You would have thrived playing here." And I was like, "Andrew, this team would not have even got a sniff from me because you see how they like could give two shits about the softball field. Like they don't care. They're tailgating. There's beer bottles, there's glass. They're picking it up before practice. Like, and now they have that Pete Frady's facility and they poured $65 million into this baseball softball facility. And it was
Uh-huh.
like absolutely stunning to the point where I was like, damn you, Dub, you guys gotta like get going here. Like they had 8 cages. They had like baseball, softball do everything together at Boston College.
Okay.
So whether or not you like that, that's kind of how the flow is. Sometimes they have to share space, but like they do all their lifting, all their hitting, everything in those
Oh wow.
cages. The baseball, softball's connected. Shoot, cold tubs, hot tubs. Like I was walking through and I was just had this like, damn, like if I would have had something like this back in the day, like we had amazing facilities at UW, but I just feel like they're starting to just get so much better and so much better and so much better. Like it was cool to see the ACC get that opportunity, especially Boston College from when I saw them way back in 20, maybe like 11
Yeah.
to now they've come a long way. So for having to play in Boston in the cold, which would have been so hard, those are the little things that can potentially give an athlete that little extra, like, huh, like that's a lot of money in that facility. Like I'm going to be able to get better working my
Right.
ass off at those facilities that you can maybe get a kid to go there, even though they know it's going to be cold and a grind. It was beautiful. So
Yeah.
the things to think about too. The climate is a huge piece.
And the facility, I think that kind of leads into the facilities. I think that's a big piece of the recruiting process too, is like you want to walk into a weight room and know that they value that strength and conditioning program and that they're putting money into it and that they're, you know, I mean, you've got some that have like cafeterias attached to them now where like the athletes go and like eat full meals afterwards that are separate from like their food meal packages from the dorms. And it's like, that's insane. Like all we would get. We would get muscle milks and like sometimes
I
we
know.
get like a protein bar. Like, yay, like that was awesome. And they were like in this little cooler, like right by the exit. But like now you've got like these huge like smoothie bars and food and fruit. And those are the types of things you want to keep an eye on for sure.
I mean, I feel like I'm owed a lot of money and I'm owed a stipend for food that I had to spend money on. Even though I
Yep.
was on a fluoride scholarship, I had to spend more money on food than some may think. We had a
Oh yeah.
card, but that balance ran out after a while.
Yeah.
the pints of ice cream
Very
and the
quickly.
Friday night. It does.
You eat a lot of
Loose-
calories. Like you have to keep up the food intake. Like, yes, there's a freshman 15, but like when you're working out the way that we have to work out, like
I
that should allow you to double your meal plan right there.
I put on a lot of weight my freshman year.
Oh,
And
yeah,
I'm not
we
embarrassed
all
to
did.
say it.
We all did.
People talk about my weight a lot or ask about my weight. Like when I was at my best at my playing weight, when I was at my best playing weight, I was anywhere from 188 pounds to 194 pounds. Like that was kind of like my range. So when I did the Olympic stuff again, I knew pitching wise, that's where I needed to be.
Mm-hmm.
In college, my freshman year, I put on about 25 pounds. I was weighing in at like 215. We're talking like linebacker status.
Yeah.
But the difference is like we had a different strength and conditioning piece than all of these athletes have now. Now it's so much mobility, individual.
Yep.
But back in the day, like we were doing like hardcore, just all football stuff.
Weights.
Significantly
Straight weights.
heavy.
Yep.
And like the downfall of that, even though I believed in the process and I loved our strength and conditioning coach, you don't see a lot of MLB pitchers. Like I remember Tim Lincecum, first round draft pick, San Francisco Giants, multiple World Series. Like he was one of the best. It was so cool to watch that guy work out at UW. But like bro was the skinniest thing in the world up top because if you have hardcore muscle, like you're not able to have the same rotation and mobility that you need to be able to have. And so I actually lost a lot of mobility like my freshman year because I was so jacked.
You're
up
bulked.
top.
Yeah.
And like, not to say that I couldn't still be a successful softball player at 215 pounds, like my body weight and muscle mass and all of it, like I'm always overweight BMI when I go to a doctor. I'm a strong athlete, but no, it's okay to put on weight. It's just trying to figure out kind of that healthy weight that still allows you to be a force to be reckoned with when you're on the field, fast twitch muscles, all of those things. So I actually had to lose a good chunk of weight. And then that 2008 Olympic year is where we really had to dial it in because I took the whole year off. But everyone kind of like goes through that your freshman year because you're away from home.
Mm-hmm.
The sense of comfort is sometimes eating and you're working out a ton and you're grinding and but it's cool to kind of look back and think about like that process. Like I'm always very transparent with my weight. I think people have always like questioned me on that. Like I'm a 5'7", was walking around at a strong ass weight. And I think it's important when you're a pitcher that you have to be strong. Obviously, the older I've gotten, I've been able to like shed a little bit of weight because it doesn't matter as much anymore. But 2020 Olympics, like I was close to 200 pounds then too, because at the end of the day, Kaylee Rafter, assistant coach at Florida State University, would always say to me, like, if you lose a lot of weight and we're trying to like be the best athletes in the world, like you have to remember for softball, for hitting, and when it comes to pitching, like you have to be able to generate a huge amount of power, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like not to like use this or say this, but like keep that in mind when you're going through your recruiting process, right? Like I get NIL and I get that there's all this social media stuff and you're looking at things and people are small and they're beautiful, but like at the end of the day, your strength is your beauty. And that is ultimately going to be a gift when it comes to this recruiting process. So don't lose sight of like being big and strong and how that can help you throughout your recruiting process. And that's something that I hope that I can continue to help at least teach my girls. I can't speak for anyone else's kids, but I know how hard that part of life can be when you're a girl mom. So it's just keeping in mind the importance of that piece too.
Healthy does not mean small in any way, shape, or form. And BMI, it's bullshit. Like I can 100% say that with certainty. Like it is not an accurate scale to be going off of. So when you go to the doctors and all that stuff and they're telling you like, if you're healthy or you're not, like look into it, like look into the kinds of things that you should be putting into your body and what you shouldn't be. But that's a huge part of the process too. In recruiting is like in Hawaii, there's rice with every single meal that you eat. There's rice everywhere. And I'm a huge carb person. I love potatoes, French fries, all forms of potatoes, the rice, like I could eat that by itself. Yeah. And so that was a huge struggle for me because yes, like you said, we're bulking up like crazy. Like my sophomore year, 2010, I was squatting more than my body weight. And it's like, That
It's
is some
awesome.
intense, like that is intense. Like I got home and Mike was like, I think you're bigger than I am. And it was like, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I know,
So,
but I don't know what you want me to do about it. Like I'm doing my program, like I'm just following the instructions.
yeah.
But it's a give and a take because like if you're gaining the weight, you have to find a way to like offset that. Like you have to increase your conditioning. Anyways, it's the recruiting process when you're thinking about strength and conditioning and putting yourself in the best position possible, like it needs to be a holistic approach. It can't just be I have to fix my hitting or I have to fix my pitching. Like it has to be all of it together, and you need to be taking steps in every like the psychology, all of it. It's they're looking at you as a whole person. They're
Yep.
not looking at you for one individual thing. So, and I'll scream it till the cows come home is there is a school out there for you that is going to be the right fit,
Yep.
but you have to find it. There's so many schools that offer scholarships, and there's D1, D2, D3, there's JUCOs, right? Like one of the greatest that we've ever played, like I've ever played with, Jenna Rodriguez, the one that hit the home run against Alabama, played
Mm-hmm.
at a JUCO for 2 years, and then she transferred to Hawaii. And then
Yep.
she went and did all of that. So there is no shame in whatever that path looks like for you. You just have to figure out the right one for you. And that's
Yeah.
the hardest part is, like you said, keep out the noise and just know, like, what are you looking to get out of your experience,
Mm.
and trying to like empower your kids to figure out like it's okay if you don't go to a top 10 school. It's okay if you don't go to a powerhouse, as long as it's the right one for you and you're comfortable and you can be the best athlete and you're going to grow and flourish and do all these things. That's all that matters at the end of the day.
And I think remembering the steps to get there, right? We can get really lost in it being very individualized
Mm-hmm.
now more than ever. And I think I said this to HT on the podcast last week, like throughout the process back in the day, like we didn't have to necessarily worry so much about ourselves in the recruiting process because we were very team driven. We were told to
Mm-hmm.
care more about the team. And now so many different showcase tournaments, and it can feel like it's me. So I think really remembering that when those opportunities are there or coaches are there watching you, like shit, it's easy to sit here and say like this really is like the truth. When you F up, all eyes are on you more than when you hit a home run, because
Mm-hmm.
there is this, moment for a coach to look at and remember that if I'm going to give you this opportunity and this gift to come and play here for 4 years and be a part of this university, at the end of the day, like I said to you, it's like coming and joining my family. I ain't letting anyone into this house to be a part of this family unless I'm doing my homework and I know that they're going to be able to come in and make us better, and have the qualities of like what we stand for, right?
Right.
So I think that there is just this importance of remembering like the failure piece and how you choose to react is why I love sports. We dealt with this yesterday in Maddie's basketball, short story. Yesterday, she got absolutely hammered after a play, like
Uh-huh.
shoved to the ground. She wasn't even paying attention. And, whistles blown, girl gets taken out of the game. And like I instantly kind of stood up because it's the first time my kid's just been like absolutely crushed, not paying attention after a play. And I'm like, shit, she was like trying to hurt my kid. Like I kind of got like
Oh, like
upset.
protective. Yeah, I'm sure.
And then there was this moment where I was like, damn, I love that my kid is going through this right now because I want to see how she reacts.
Yep.
Back in the day, I probably would have got up and tried to punch the kid. But that's how I was raised. If someone throws the first punch, you best believe like I was going to end it. Never did I get in a fight, thankfully. Can't speak on my brother's behalf. But Maddie like kind of took it and stood up, and like her teammates surrounded her and she took herself out of the situation. But it was like the conversation after, like Maddie's just so amped up and wants to talk about it, talk about it, talk about it. I'm like, hey, dude, like in women's sports, this happens.
A
Basketball is
lot.
ferocious.
Yep.
How we choose to react to it and know that you probably are a tough ass, defender and someone that when they're playing against you, they don't like it and you frustrate them and you're going to
Right.
get this reaction out of kids. But how you choose to react in that moment is huge. And I'm proud of you for you taking it, owning it. And ultimately, that young lady has to learn to deal with her emotions in sport because you can't do that.
Yeah.
And it's, it is what it is. But understanding that piece, like if a coach were to look at that and come to a game and these girls were 16, 17, I don't want that girl on my team.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're in a softball game and a teammate messes up as a pitcher, like, am I looking at that girl, calling time, connecting with the second baseman, like, dude, I got you. Like, let's take a breath. I'm going to roll you another ground ball. Or are you showing attitude on the mound because your teammate just, made an error, and now you're like, oh, now I need to do this.
Yeah.
So it's like learning to deal with the shit storm that's thrown your way, and I think appreciate learning how to deal with that, because that's life lessons.
It's huge.
That's stuff that we can take on even past the 4 years of college, and why a lot of, student athletes get the opportunity to get a lot of jobs right out of school, because it's like, dude, you've gone through the ringer. You've learned a lot. Like, I want that person instead of that person. I want the student
100%.
athlete.
Yeah.
Just a very interesting moment for me to be a part of yesterday. And
I'm proud of you.
I was proud of how I handled
I'm proud of you. Yeah, I think.
And I almost wanted to say something to the mom when I walked by, and then I just reminded myself, like, what is that going to do? Like, me saying something or throwing a jab or having what is that going to do? It's not going to do anything. So we're going to take the high road. We're going to go this way. And it is what it is. Because at the end of the day, they're 10-year-olds. I don't really care that much. I don't care that much.
It's the hardest thing. It's so hard because you know that, and this is my belief. I'm pretty sure you'd feel the same, but it's like kids are a direct result of their parents. 1,000%. The way that you're parenting and raising your kids is going to show in their behavior. And so if they're making choices like that, where they're getting physical or they're not emotionally managing what's happening, that is a direct result of of something that needs to change or that needs to be enhanced, or like you need to look into it. And to not say something is so much harder than to say something. And it's, I think I've told you, I struggle with it. I'm doing a lot better. We also haven't had a game in a while, so I feel like that's partially. I've had a break, so I'm on like a cool vibe right now. We have a tournament coming up, so who knows? Like, all bets are off. But I think it is really hard because I don't blame the kids on the field for making those decisions, for losing their shit and like going all crazy. I blame the parents. Like, we'll take it to the parking lot. That's fine, but at the end of the day, like, I know that we're teaching our kids that that's not how you handle the situation. Like, you need to like have composure and figure it out. Like, for a college coach to walk up to a game, see you strike out in like a pivotal moment. Let's say runners scoring position, you're down by 1, whatever. You strike out. If they see you walk back to the dugout and just completely shut everybody out, that is not a player I want on my team. If they see you come up to the next person who's up to bat, hey, you know what? You got me on the inside pitch. Don't let her get you to. You got this. I believe in you. The power's in your hands. Like having that moment and having that ability to put it outside of yourself. It's not about you anymore. Those are the types of players these coaches are looking for. Anybody can hit a home run. Anybody can strike somebody out. It's what you do in those moments of failure. Like we've said, I don't know how many times we've said that. That should have been our tagline for the podcast.
I don't, people may take this the wrong way, but coaches are looking at how parents choose to react, number one. Okay, shitty parents. And some may be mad that I'm saying this, but coaches look at gene pools. They look at the genes of parents.
Yeah.
And they can look at a kid and process stuff that way too. And I'm only saying that from coaches at the highest level that talk about that. So when they're at travel ball tournaments, and they're not allowed to talk to the athletes yet, they're allowed to talk to the head coaches of the teams, right?
Right.
And they're allowed to say like, hey, okay, I'm looking at the third baseman. Can you point me to like where their parents are so I can see what their parents look like? So they're looking at the parents.
Yep.
And they're able to say, hey, how do they react? But genes matter. Gene pool matters. Like looking at athletic ability, looking at like all of those things are things that mean more when you get to that next level. And some may take that the wrong way, but ultimately I think that that's an important piece too, because you're asking these athletes to be, potentially professional athletes. So the wear and tear on their body year to year to year, they have to be able to take on a good amount of stamina. So how are they taking care of their body? How are their parents taking care of their bodies? All of those things. It may not seem like it as much in softball because it's not like a hardcore sport like soccer where they're running a ton, but they really do look at like those little things and how the body works. And Yeah, I'm just saying those are things that I've
There's
heard.
tells. There's like little tells that they look for. And it's like,
Yeah,
is the athlete like constantly looking at the stands at their parents to get a
yeah,
like to see what their reaction is or to get their feedback? Or are they so zoned in and focused on their team? Like there's little things that
yeah.
happen throughout games that like college coaches pick up on it so quickly. You know,
Yeah.
is it immediately after the game you're picking up your phone and you're sitting there scrolling and not paying attention to like what's going on around you? Like I cannot tell you enough how annoying it is to like if you're at a team function, like put your phone away. Like
Yeah.
it's and all of those things. Like if the parents are sitting there scrolling on their phones the whole game, that's not a
Yeah.
good look either.
I think I'm gonna try to get Sam Bannister. Do you know who Sam Bannister is?
It sounds super
She
familiar.
she played at Arizona,
Okay.
two-time Women's College World Series. Coaches this travel ball team in Florida. Girlfriend is like electric on TikTok. She is so authentic about this whole process of like the rules and regulations that she has for her team and stuff. I think it'd be really cool to try to get her on because she's super open and honest. Like she has so many rules for these girls when they go to showcase tournaments. Like
Right.
they're not allowed to wear their Crocs in between games. They have to wear their turfs. They are not allowed to have boyfriends at
The games.
tournaments. They are not allowed to be on their phones in between games. They are not allowed to swear. All of these things that you look at and you're like, oh, sometimes it just naturally a shit comes out. No, like the way that you choose to like act, especially in those environments, meaning like maybe when you're not in the environment of where the other coaches are, if you go out to a restaurant and eat in between games,
Yep.
same thing, not sitting on your phone, not cursing because there could be other coaches around
That you don't even know that they're there. Mm-hmm.
and then you put yourself in a position where it's like, I have to, and now it just starts to get dicier and dicier because there's more pressure than ever with how much is under a microscope for these kids. Like, bro, what you choose to post on social media is a true
Matters.
reflection
It matters. Yep.
of who we are. And you
Yep.
cannot forget that. But listen, the most important thing, the videos that other people take of you,
Mm-hmm.
people, the better you get, the more cutthroat it will be, meaning people will be out to get you. And
They'll
if you
look
do
for
one thing
reasons to make you
Yep.
fail.
one thing to piss someone off, bro, I got this video of Danielle doing XYZ and I'm going to post it. And like, hey, so yeah, you got to be mindful of the stuff that you're choosing to put on the internet. But more importantly, your inner circle people matter. Okay.
Yep.
So when you're going out and you're doing things, at the end of the day, what should be in the forefront of your mind is like, I want to play the next level. I want to play in college. If I do this, could this potentially hurt my opportunity of getting this? You work your life for it. So at the end of the day, you have to remember that one stupid thing you do or one drunken night of doing something stupid or saying something stupid when you're not even legally old enough to be able to drink can potentially hurt you. So I think it's just being aware of those types of things and the importance of that, because I don't know if we talk about the social media stuff enough and how one viral thing that you put out there can ultimately hurt you for the rest of your life.
It's such a huge part of this recruiting process now, and I hope that younger kids are really understanding. I mean, like you control Maddie's, so I think that that's a good place to start. Is like make sure that you have a handle on what's going on. But like I've heard horror stories of like parents where like one parent who's watching two kids, one that's not theirs, the kid did something on Snapchat or TikTok or something. So then the parent feels responsible to tell that kid's parents, tells the kid's parents, they're like, what's Snapchat? And it's like,
Yeah.
bro, like you have to be on top of this stuff. If you're willing to give your kid a phone and you're giving them that access, if you're letting them have social media, you have to be on it like a hawk. It's not about trust. It's not about that. They're not old enough to understand the repercussions of those actions.
Yeah.
So it's your job to tell them. And gosh, it's so annoying right now. It's so hard at the age that they're at.
Yeah.
With ours specifically. I'm sure everybody else is like, well, wait till they're 15. And I'm like, I can wait. I'm good.
It's scary because they just don't know. Because when you're young, it's the most beautiful time at the end of the day too, because life seems easy peasy.
Carefree.
You know, like you don't realize the impacts of certain things that you can do or other kids. And I want to keep my children as innocent as I can throughout this process, knowing that. But at the end of the day, stuff starts to get cutthroat pretty quick.
Very quick. Very quick.
Yeah. I don't know. This has been a really interesting episode because I feel like we've been able to just throw so much out there. and it may seem like some of it's just word vomited out there, but it really is stuff that I think about throughout this
The
whole
whole
process.
process.
Yeah.
It's daunting. Like, we know it's not easy, especially
Yeah.
now. Like, I would take recruiting back in our day any day over what it is now. I do think there's a level of accessibility that's a lot easier, right? Coaches have a lot more ability to look into players and really get a feeling for them. But we understand that it can be super daunting, and, ask questions, right? Like,
Yeah.
leave us comments, DM us, like whatever it is, like ask us what we would do. It's not
Yeah.
a bad thing to not know, right? The worst thing you can do is just go in and hope that everything's okay. Like, if you want to know, ask the questions.
Yeah.
And before you swipe your credit card and go pay all these recruiters or these websites and all that stuff, like, take a step back and just say, like, is this really something that's going to further what we're trying to accomplish here? But
Yeah.
I don't envy us for having to go through it in the next couple of years, because I mean, as of right now, like on the path that our girls are both on, I think that that's something that we are going to definitely be dealing with. But,
Mhm.
it does help. I do feel a little bit better because we have at least somewhat of an understanding of how this all works out.
And it's just like trusting your gut throughout the process too. Like,
Mm-hmm.
at times I would feel so much pressure with like having to make decisions and do stuff really quick. And at the end of the day, my dad would always say, like, if you're great, they'll wait. Like, you don't have to rush to make a decision because you're getting threatened that they'll give this opportunity to someone else. Well, then shit, you don't think that I'm worthy of like being able to take a couple days to really process one of the biggest decisions of my whole entire life. Like,
Right.
don't pressure me into making that decision. And that happens a lot more than I think people realize, is
Mm-hmm.
these coaches have the ability to put the pressure on the athlete, because a lot of these top schools, a lot of kids want to go there. So it's like, hey,
Yeah.
Alex, if you're not going to tell me in the next day, like, I'm going to give it to this kid. And then you start to feel like, oh God, like if I don't, I'm not going to get to go to this school. Shit. What do you feel in your gut? And that I didn't listen to my head throughout the process. I listened to my gut, what felt
Yeah.
right and
Yep.
what felt wrong. And if I listened to something else, I don't know if I would have made the best decision that I needed to make for me. So it's like, remember, if you're great, they will wait, especially if you're one of the best in the country. There is no rush to have to make this decision so quickly. Like, really make sure you're putting the right eggs in the basket you need to.
Vetting it out. Yeah.
Because, yet again, I always say this almost every couple episodes, you dedicate your life to the sport.
Mm-hmm.
You earn the right to make the decision to where you want to go, and don't lose sight of that. Stay
Mm-hmm.
true to what feels right, where you want to go, and trust that process. And there's no greater feeling and more of a powerful feeling in the whole world than knowing you get to make that decision. Don't rush it or make it because someone else wants you to make it. Like, you get to take your breath, take your second, and realize this is one of the coolest experiences that I'm going to get to have these next 4 years. I have to be committed to wherever I want to go. So,
Yeah. Heart has to be in it for sure.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
all right,
Cool.
guys, that was great. I liked it. We are off to Happy Thanksgiving for everybody in the US that's listening. Canadians, I know you celebrated a couple weeks ago, but hope that you guys all enjoy your time with your families, and we will be back next week. And we have a big convention next week, NFCA, that we're super excited about, that we will be attending and hopefully getting a couple snippets for some coaches. So make sure you stay tuned for that. But
Yep.
as always, if you need anything, have questions, comments, leave them below, and we will be back next week. Thanks, guys.